Hello, child of God. This is CPA Shadrach Adino, an expert on wealth creation and management. I'm also a practicing auditor and a financial management consultant. Above all, I'm a born-again child of God and a pastor. I want to take this opportunity to welcome you to today's episode. In our previous episode, we touched on save, and we gave guidelines on how you can successfully save. We also mentioned that saving has become a nightmare to many of us, but it is possible. Just go through those guidelines and practice them, and you will be able to save. In our today's episode, we are going to cover step number 4 on our journey of wealth creation and management. Step number 4 today is avoid liabilities, buy assets. Now, let me explain. Liabilities are a big drain on our resources. If we find a way of avoiding liabilities, we will be able to create wealth. That's why, dear listener, I want to encourage you, pay keen attention on these matters of avoiding liabilities and buy assets. Let's go together. Let me now begin by explaining what liabilities are. Now, liabilities are simply items that take away money from you. If you see anything that you've bought with your money and it is not adding more income to you, it is not helping you generate cash flows, those are liabilities. Anything eating up into your resources are liabilities. The more they continue eating up into your resources, the more they prevent you from wealth creation. We can avoid those ones and embark on things that will help us create wealth. Let me give examples of liabilities based on the context of today's teaching. Number 1, unprofitable loans. Loans become unprofitable if we spend that money on things that do not help us generate money. For example, you could be taking a loan for domestic consumption. Actually, it has ended up eating into your money. It will not generate income for you. That is a liability. Avoid such kind of loan. Another example is taking a loan for things like a wedding. You have celebrated. People have really rejoiced and be happy on your wedding, but it leaves you with a debt. That is a very unprofitable loan. Another area which eats into our money and we consider it as a liability are private cars. Somebody might wonder, how are private cars liabilities? Let me explain. A car is good, yes. It makes you acquire a certain status. It makes you feel good, yes. But do you know a private car does not generate cash inflows for you? It only eats into your money. This is how it eats into your money. When there is a mechanical breakdown on that vehicle, you'll have to dip into your pocket, spend money to repair that vehicle. You will always need money to service that vehicle. After a certain interval of time, that vehicle will be calling on your money. Service me. As you continue servicing that money, that vehicle, it is eating into your money, but not generating cash inflow for you. The vehicle on a regular basis will need insurance cover. Insurance cover is a cost. In fact, some insurance covers range from 3% on comprehensive cover, 3% of the value of the vehicle, up to, say, 7%. As you pay 7%, it is eating into your money, but not helping you generate income. I consider those to be liabilities because their work is to drain on your money and not add value to you. They don't generate cash inflows. So I'm advising you, avoid liabilities, buy assets. When we talk of assets, we are referring to rental property, we are referring to stocks. Assets are those items that when you buy, they generate cash inflows. Now, they generate cash inflows because when you buy them, people will be paying you money to use those property that you buy. When you buy them, after duration of time, the value will have increased. When you buy them, you'll be relaxing somewhere, but money will be flowing into you. So assets are items that generate cash inflows for you. And we've given 2 examples as rental property, which generate rental income, stocks or shares, which generate dividends at the end of any financial year, and also increase in values. So such items I consider to be assets. So on matters of creating wealth and management of wealth, I advocate for go slow on liabilities, but be very quick on assets that generate cash inflows. Now let's deal with the next item. We are saying for you to deal with the liabilities, please don't hold too much onto those debts. Pay off your debts. Pay off your debts, because we've just explained that anything that eats into your money is going to be an enemy of wealth creation and management. Therefore, one of them we've said is debt. Please pay off on your debts. Now, the reasons why you need to pay off on your debts as fast as possible. Debts tend to turn people into slaves. A slave is a person who has no right. A slave is a person that is told to do this and he must obey because he's a debtor. Don't spend this and you have to obey. Look at countries that have a lot of debts. The donor community will come with so many conditionalities to those countries. They say democracy is a must. You have to adhere because you have their money. You are a debtor. You are like a slave. You must obey their instruction. Therefore, child of God, I'm telling you, being a debtor is like being a slave to that lender. Number two, debts interfere with financial plans. You cannot be able to freely plan with your money. Why? Because out of that money, you will have to pay somebody's money. If you plan to use your money 100%, you cannot use it 100% because you have somebody's debt. You have to repay that debt first. Therefore, debts interfere with financial plan. Number three, debts spoil good relationships. You have a good relationship with your neighbor. You have a good relationship with your colleague. You have a good relationship with your church member. And yet, because you borrowed his money and paying has been a challenge, now it spoils friendships, it spoils relationship. I want to encourage you, avoid debts and maintain good relationship with your friends, with your relatives, with your members, with your neighbors. Avoid debt and maintain good relationships. Number four, debts cause people to play hide and seek. Imagine before you borrowed somebody's money, you are very close. You are having fellowships together. You are doing business together. You are in discussion groups together. But from the day you borrowed that person's money, you don't want to meet with that person. If you see that person coming from a distance, you feel like running to hide. Debts cause people to play hide and seek games. Avoid it. Therefore, debt should be avoided as much as possible. Now, because debt is not beneficial, let me give you two approaches to debt settlement. If you want to settle your debt, which I advocate seriously that you should do, here are two methods of settling debts. The first method means snowball method. In snowball method, you are taking a stock of all your debts. What are my borrowings? You borrowed money from person A. You borrowed money from person B. You borrowed money from person C. You borrowed money from person D. You have a list of the people that you borrowed their money. Now, look at the small debts among the list of your debts and start by settling those small debts. When you settle that small debt successfully, psychologically, you will feel good and say, now that I'm able to clear debt A, I'm also able to clear debt C, debt B, and debt D. That snowball method gives you motivation that you are able to do it. Let me continue doing it until I clear all debts. So that is called snowball method. Method number two is called avalanche method. Avalanche method considers the cost of borrowing, the high interest, the medium interest, and the low interest rates. Therefore, when you use avalanche method of debt settlement, that method will consider to deal with high interest borrowings first. So you will choose a debt which has the highest interest, settle it first, go to the next debt with the second highest, settle it, go to the next debt with the third highest until you clear all your debts. Now, this method considers the money that you are going to spend. It says, why should I keep people paying back a debt with high interest if I can be able to pay it? So you are reducing on the amount of money you spend on settling debts. That is why you start by settling debts which are more expensive and end with debts which are low expensive in terms of interest rates. So those are the two methods of debt settlement. Personally, as an individual and as an advisor on matters of wealth creation and management, I would go for avalanche method. I want to deal with the cost of borrowing, settle debts with high cost, then end with the debts of low cost. Other than going for small debts and ending with high debts, I would go for avalanche method. Now let's look at the rare cases where debt should be allowed. Remember, we are not advocating for debt for that matter, but there are rare cases where somebody can be allowed to borrow money. Now, case number one, you have a rare opportunity and the only financing available is through land. If you have an opportunity that is not common, you have a property that is rarely available in the market, and the only available financing method is through debt, I encourage you to go and borrow money. For example, there is land that somebody is offering as a matter of emergency. The owner of the land has an emergency that he must deal with very quickly, and therefore he is selling his parcel of land at a throwaway price. In that case, if you don't have ready money, go and borrow money and don't miss that opportunity. Buy that land. Another case will be a house. You have an opportunity to acquire a residential property or a rental property. It is a rare opportunity because the offer price is so much lower than the market price. You lose the opportunity will not come again back. They say opportunities are very rare. Opportunities have wings, they fly away. Therefore, if you want to make use of that opportunity, get hold of it when it is still available. If you have such an opportunity, please go and borrow money and buy that house. Because if you leave it, you'll never get a house like it again. Another case where debt may be allowed is when you have an asset which will pay for itself. If you have an asset, and that asset will give you returns, and those returns will be enough to repay back that debt, please go for that debt. For example, if you have a public service vehicle, which we normally call matatus, and you've done a cash flow budgeting or cash flow projection, and you've noticed that the amount of cash flow that you're going to generate from that PSV business is more than the periodic repayment of that loan, I advise you, go for that debt. Buy that PSV because you're assured that PSV will pay for itself. Another opportunity where you can use borrowing is when you have a rental property. You have a rental property which you want to buy. There is a credit facility for acquiring that rental property. You've done your calculation and you've realized that the amount of rental income that you're going to generate from that property will enable you to pay that loan by itself. I encourage you, go for that credit facility, acquire that rental property, and let the rental property pay for that loan. Under that case, go ahead and get a credit facility. Number 3, when you have a cheaper loan, which you are going to use to settle a more expensive loan, I encourage you, go for that cheaper loan. There is no point in retaining that expensive loan if you have a way of clearing it. If you have a cheaper credit facility, which you will use for settling this other expensive loan, then in that case, go for that credit facility, settle off that more expensive loan, and be left with this cheaper loan to repay periodically. You will be at peace. You will be saving money for wealth creation and management. Number 4, you have a business opportunity. And that business opportunity, if you do a feasibility study or an evaluation, that business will generate income which is high enough to pay back that credit facility. If you have such a business and you're persuaded that the returns from that business will be big enough to pay back this loan, my friend, go for that credit facility, go for that loan and get that business running. Now, when you have a property that will help you save on fixed expenditure, that is another rare case where you're supposed to go for a credit facility. You have a property. When you acquire that property, acquiring or owning that property alone is going to help you save on a fixed expenditure. For example, you have an opportunity to buy a residential house. Every month you pay rent where you stay, and you make a comparison. The loan repayment on a monthly basis compared with the rent I pay on a monthly basis, I've realized that I'm going to save on some little money. The repayment is lower than the rent that you've been paying. In that case, I encourage you, go for that credit facility, buy that residential building and save on the rent that you pay on every month. However, there's a word of caution here. Remember, every benefit must have an obligation. Yes, you are benefiting because you are saving on rental payment that you make per month. You are benefiting because you now have a house that you call yours. But remember, with this benefit, with this blessing, there's an obligation. This property will need to be maintained. There is cost of maintenance. You will be paying on utilities, electricity and water. That will be a cost on your resources. You will be making repairs and maintenance. That will be a cost. You will be making payment on service facilities like security and others. That will be a cost. So before you make a decision to take a loan for a residential building, I advise you, do a cost-benefit analysis. What is the cost of acquiring this facility? And what is the benefit of acquiring this facility? If the benefit is higher than the cost, go for that credit facility. But if you realize that the benefits will be lower than the cost, go slow on borrowing. Please, before you make a decision on taking a borrowing for a residential house, do cost-benefit analysis so that your decision by the end of the day will help you in saving, and as a result of saving, you'll be able to create wealth and manage wealth. Let's continue, child of God. I want us to discourage these feel-good status loans. I want to discourage it. There are some of us that borrow to get things that make them feel good. After feeling good, the person is left alone crying. Avoid such. And that is why before you make a decision to take a credit facility, please weigh the benefits against the costs. Some of the feel-good status loans include, you want to buy a car, and it is a personal car with no economic returns. I take a bank loan just to buy a car. After some time, I will realize that this car needed repairs and maintenance. This car needed fuel. This car needed comprehensive insurance cover. This car needed periodic service. I don't have enough money to maintain all these. Now you start cursing, you start regretting. Why are you cursing and regretting? Why are you hurting? It's because you took a loan to feel good and to belong to a certain class of people. Please avoid these feel-good status loans. It is not good practice. It is not a good behavior for me to drive and yet I call somebody to help me with my domestic upkeep matters. That is not fair. It is not good to be a driver owning a car and yet I call people to borrow money for fuel. I ask people to support me in maintaining my car, and yet people that look at me at a distance think that I am in a certain class. It is not fair. Number two, avoid these loans for holiday trips. Avoid these loans for holiday trips. I'm taking a loan to go on a holiday. That is not fair. Avoid them. Save on that money. Number three, I'm taking a loan to buy household furnishing just to look good in my house. And yet I forget that after taking this loan, I'll be called upon to repay. Please, just be yourself. Don't look good and suffer. Just be yourself. There's time for everything. Number four, loans for wedding parties. I prepare a big elaborate wedding, and yet the money I'm using are monies from borrowings. Please avoid that. Number five, get-together parties. I prepare get-together parties with borrowed money. Please avoid that. It does not add value. Number six, domestic consumption. I take a borrowing to consume with my family. After consuming, there's nothing in return. I will have to pay back this money. Avoid that at all costs. Just be yourself. Just relax. A right time is coming for everything. Now, I want us to look at factors to consider when taking a loan. Factors to consider when taking a loan. And dear listener, that will be our last part in today's presentation. Now, if you have to take a loan, please consider the following factors. Consider one, ability to repay the loan. Don't just close eyes and go for that loan. Remember, the lender will call upon you to return that money. Ask yourself, do I have enough cash flows to pay back that money? If you consider your income and on every month you have enough money to pay back that loan, then go for it. Number two, consider cost of that loan. When I talk about cost of that loan, I refer to interest rate of loan. When the interest rate of loan is very high, please go slow. Compare the market interest rates. Compare interests being levied by various financial institutions, and then take one which is a little bit cheaper. Consider the cost of borrowing before you go for that loan. Number three, consider whether the cost of borrowing is fixed or variable. Look at the interest rates. Let the bankers tell you that the interest rate that we are going to charge will remain fixed for the duration of that loan, or it will be variable. There are certain banks that increase loan interest rates. When inflation increases, they also increase interest rate. If you know that bank increases interest rates when inflation increases, then avoid that loan. Just go for a loan which has a fixed interest rate. They will tell you if you ask them. If you don't ask them, they will never tell you. Number four, consider benefits that will accrue from that loan. Is this loan going to be beneficial for me, or it will not be beneficial? For example, a loan which enables you to acquire property which will give you cash inflows in return, that is a beneficial loan. But a loan which, once you've consumed it, you are left with nothing to show for it, that is not a beneficial loan. Avoid it. Number five, consider whether you really need that loan at that time. There are certain times that we take loan because somebody has taken a loan. We take loan because we want to feel good. Please, consider keenly, do I really need to take this loan at this time? Or I'm just taking it for the sake of taking it? Remember, the days that we are living in currently, credit suppliers are really following people for money. They are dishing out loans. And as they advertise their loans, you can be tempted to take a loan at a time that you don't need that loan. Please, before you go for it, and let me say categorically, before you fall into that trap, consider whether you really need that credit facility at that time or you don't need it at that time. Now, dear listener, we are coming to the end of today's episode. I want to encourage you, please take time, review this clip. Watch it again. It's going to be beneficial for you if you watch it again. Otherwise, I want to stop here, dear listener. And as we stop, I request you to subscribe to this channel, like this channel, and turn on the notification bell. If you do the three, every time that we upload a video, YouTube is going to notify you. I want to encourage you, stay tuned to this channel. We have lined up more videos to teach us on how to create and manage wealth. Remember what we said at the beginning. Wealth creation does not differentiate, is not biased, does not choose whether you are poor, whether you are rich, you can create wealth. Whether you are an orphan, whether you are a widow, you can still create wealth. Please stay tuned, and I pray may God bless you and may you prosper in Jesus' name. Amen.